Six-step problem solving is an adaptable and creative means of solving a problem while dramatically reducing the possibility of conflict in a group. There are hundreds of approaches to problem solving, and many can be used successfully in group settings. This design not only solves the problem, but does so while building a greater sense of trust through collaboration. And you can use the design individually or in groups of 2, 10, or even 20. It's that adaptable. You can complete this design in an hour, or it could take several. It depends on what problem you are trying to solve. 2 hours is usually enough for most problems, but make sure this is enough time to fully cover all the issues. Please note that if the group is completely unskilled in problem solving, or the problem is especially contentious, this activity might take closer to 3 hours to complete. Ensure that you have enough physical space to be able to work in smaller groups, with each subgroup having some wall space, a flip chart on an easel, markers and tape, for displaying the ongoing work of the problem-solving process. Let's use an example for demonstrating the six-step problem-solving design. A small college has been losing increasing numbers of students after their second year. The impact on the college is approaching $1.5 million annually in lost revenues. There has also been an impact on morale of the remaining students and faculty, leading to reduced levels of productivity on both sides. A group of 4 faculty members, 3 administrators, 3 students, and 2 recent alumni have been selected to assess the problem and make specific recommendations for improvement. The facilitator's first job is to establish a clear problem statement from which to work. This defines the condition that exists and needs to be addressed. It is stated objectively, descriptively, and as specifically as possible. The more specific the problem, the easier it is to attack. Develop an initial statement for the group, like this one. An increasing number of students are leaving the college between their first and second years. Here's a really top tip. Make sure the statement does not identify whether the reality of the condition is good or bad, or suggest what things would be like if the problem were solved. Beginning with a description of the current reality reduces the tendency to jump prematurely to solutions prior to the hard work of the diagnosis. The statement is the first step in the problem-solving process. Divide the group into clusters of 3 and ask them to discuss the problem statement for about 5 minutes. This can lead to changes in the statement or some clarification. Both are good. Next, the facilitator should give a preview of the 6 steps. Step 1, the diagnostic. Step 2, the benefits. Step 3, the blocks. Step 4, dealing with emotion. Step 5, generating alternatives. And Step 6, next steps. It's important to set some ground rules up before you dive into the steps. Things like sticking to each step in order and not criticizing one another's input or ideas will reduce almost all of the argument and acrimony that can occur. There are many more that the group can generate. Now divide the group into 3 different subgroups with a balanced mix of the participants: faculty, administrators, students, and alumni. These might be different groups from before because you now want to ensure that they are homogeneous in their makeup. The representation of the initial group doesn't matter because the purpose is just to increase the amount of talking among the participants. Step 1, the diagnostic. Instruct the participants to use the flip chart and list as much as they know about the condition of student attrition. Exactly what is the current reality? Why do they leave? What has changed? Why do people stay? What do people say privately that they might not say publicly? And what other kinds of information might the group need to gather before it can reach a final recommendation. The groups should remain focused on generating information about the problem and stay away from any premature problem solving or criticism. Encourage them to ask as many questions as they need to within the 20 minutes you've given them. It's helpful to stroll around and be certain that the groups are generating information and not spending time or energy with involved discussions. At the end of the 20 minutes, ask the groups to select the 3 most interesting and useful pieces of information they came up with and share these with the whole group. Creating a vivid understanding of the current reality is key to an effective and comprehensive diagnosis. Step 2, the benefits. Have the group divide into their subgroups again and take 15 minutes to explore the ideal situation and the benefits to students and the institution if changes were to be made to the current situation. What exactly would the ideal situation be? What changes must be made from the diagnostic step to move to the ideal state? What would the campus be like if the ideal situation was realised and many of these students stayed? If they were happier? Describe the positive drivers that would propel any change effort forward. It is this discrepancy between the current and ideal realities that creates the tension and motivation to solve the problem. At the end of the 15 minutes, ask the groups to select the 3 most interesting and useful pieces of information they came up with and share these with the whole group. Step 3, the blocks. Now draw a force field analysis diagram, based on Kurt Lewin's work, on a flip chart. Pick an individual problem that would be familiar to people as an example to demonstrate the force field analysis. Outline some of the benefits for change on the upward arrows, then suggest a few blocks for the downward arrows. Explain that if the group can create new impetus on the benefits, or the upward side of the equation, then there will be movement. Even better, if they can remove some of the resistances, the downward forces, the balance will change and they will be able to make more progress towards a useful solution. Now ask the subgroups to spend 10 minutes listing the factors blocking the change, in this case getting more students to stay after their first year, on a new piece of flip chart paper. Once that's done, it's time to get the whole group thinking in another direction. Ask them to consider this powerful question. What are the benefits of not changing? This helps the participants to realise change is not that easy. For example, if an individual is not a smoker anymore, it may change their identity and their accessible social groups. Add this to the force field analysis diagram from before. Now tell them to spend another 10 minutes listing as many benefits to not changing as they can. Tell the groups that this is a difficult but essential question. It is the blocks and the benefits of not changing that keep the ideal state from being reached. If they appear to be struggling, you can ask if somebody has an example to stimulate everyone's thinking, but be sure to have an example of your own ready in case everyone is struggling and you end up being left with no examples. Here's another really top tip. As they are working on each question, walk among the groups and encourage them to build their lists of responses. Make sure they don't get bogged down in premature solutions or unfocused discussion. The idea is to dig out the factors that cause the identified problem. At the end of the second 10 minutes, ask the groups to select the 3 most powerful benefits for not changing and share these with the whole group. Step 4, dealing with emotion. At this point, it is more than likely that some strong feelings have risen within people, but they've not yet shared them in their groups. Emotions drive change and the resistance to change. Our experience with change management suggests that people are naturally averse to conflict and emotion, which is why the facilitator should address the pivotal place of emotions in the change process. Ask the group to shift gears a bit and move away from the structured, rational way they have been assessing the problem and into another important dimension of problem solving. Have them discuss their strongest feelings about the problem and anything that has occurred to this point. They may have strong positive or negative feelings or emotions about what's happening, or they may not even believe the problem warrants the energy they're putting into it, or any of 100 other factors that can get their emotions going. Give them 5 minutes in total in their subgroups to take turns describing how they feel. Anything at all that's not an attack on another person is legitimate. It is not a time for discussion, but it's okay for other members of the group to ask clarifying questions. You will find that 5 minutes can be a long time for people who are not used to talking about their emotions. Here's another really top tip. Check on the groups and stop them from attempting to solve each other's feelings. Also, depending on the level of emotion in the room, you might need to let them have a quick break after they have finished this part. It is possible that you will get emotions coming out that have been bottled up for years, so this process can get intense. A break afterwards will interrupt the intensity and allow everyone to move on to the next step. Step 5. Generating alternatives. Tell the groups to stick all their sheets on the wall side by side so they can see all their data at once. Now have them take about 10 minutes to circle on their sheets the forces that can and must be altered if they're going to change the current condition. They should select their top 5 or 6. Now take about 30 minutes to write down the most creative steps the group could take to start solving their top 5 or 6 priorities only. Getting them to focus on these will make solving the whole problem much more manageable and stop them from getting overwhelmed. Get them to use all the information they have on their sheets to help generate strategies that will overcome resistance or blocks and move toward the ideal state. Then write the following on flip chart paper. What is your goal or the desired outcome? Who is to be involved and responsible for the outcome? When is the outcome expected? Ask the groups to identify all 3 of these things for each action. Also get them to consider the consequences of any potential solution. What new resistance might result? What other actions would they need to take to overcome this new resistance? Have each group present their ideas to the other 2 groups. They can ask any questions for clarification, but not for debate or criticism. Only once every group has presented their ideas can you move to negotiating the very best solutions. Can ideas from different groups be combined to form even more powerful solutions? Does an idea from one group precede another good idea from a different group? The more you can use ideas to build on one another, the more engaged all the members will be, and the more likely the ideas will be implemented. It is impossible to be prescriptive here about how to achieve this, so the facilitator will need to be creative in the moment to get the best results. Step 6. The next steps. The problem with problem solving usually occurs during the implementation of our good ideas. Once we leave the meeting, we can easily be swallowed up by other demands and commitments. As the facilitator, you can minimize the risk of this happening by making some plans to consolidate the gains of the problem-solving session and establishing the necessary follow-up. One way to do this would be to ask each subgroup for a volunteer, then have these people get together to integrate the lists of ideas. They need to be converted to tangible, prioritized actions with the details of who will be responsible for what and when. These actions would then be presented to senior management in the form of recommendations that simply need to be approved. The more concrete you can make the next steps towards implementation, the greater the chance that senior management will buy in and the ultimate objectives will be met. Here is a summary of the steps with the time needed for each. Problem statement. Step 1, the diagnostic. Step 2, the benefits. Step 3, the blocks. Step 4, dealing with emotion. Step 5, generating alternatives. And Step 6, the next steps. The total design takes 2 hours and 10 minutes.